Friends, greetings. My name is Ihor Havryshchak. Today is Wednesday, May 14th. As usual, I invite you to take a look at the most important news from this crazy world, primarily those that concern us, Ukrainians, and of course, our Ukraine. One day remains until the meeting in Istanbul on May 15th. We know exactly who will represent the United States. We know exactly who will represent Ukraine. We do not know who will represent the Kremlin. To be more precise, we can only guess. There are some hints. But in Russia, in Moscow, they're afraid to say who exactly will go because the Kremlin moth is in a panic and doesn't want to fly and accept Volodymyr Zelensky's ultimatums. Before analyzing what is happening the day before the meeting in Istanbul, I would ask you to like this video, subscribe to the channel 24, subscribe to my YouTube resource, which is in the description. Let us know where you are watching us from. Your comments, suggestions, questions are welcome. Feedback is very important. I am surprised that the whole world is watching us. France, Australia, different countries. There are a lot of Ukrainians around the world. In this case, we are promoting our Ukrainian language content and, most importantly, defending our pro-Ukrainian position. This is very important, so let's get started. In fact, I want to tell you that the pressure from the global community is unprecedented these days. Indeed, look, there is a coalition of the willing that is issuing ultimatums to Putin. Trump even says, you have to go and meet. Moreover, the leaders that Putin, the Kremlin moth, looks up to are Erdogan, the president of Turkey, who said in a conversation with Volodymyr Zelenskyy that he welcomes a ceasefire for at least 30 days and wants this dwarf to come to his territory. And most importantly, at the briefing that we will talk about with you, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, our president said that China is already saying that they welcome 30 days ceasefire. There were contacts with China, which was very surprising, and we will talk about it, that they also want to actually start negotiations at the highest level, at least contacts for a ceasefire. Our foreign minister, Sibiha, says that he spoke with his counterpart from Brazil so that Lula da Silva, the president of Brazil, would also put pressure on Putin. We see the whole world, even neutral countries, or those that are the foundation, such as China, for Russia and its war in Ukraine, putting pressure on the Kremlin moth. And the Kremlin moth is apparently afraid to fly to a NATO country. Take Mongolia, a country the warrant applied to. They did not arrest Putin in accordance with the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant. He somehow managed to squeeze poor Mongolia with China and get in. So, obviously, Putin is afraid to fly to Turkey. For 2 years now, he has been promising Erdogan to meet him on his territory, but what we have seen is that they met only in Sochi. Because Putin is really more afraid of the word NATO than his shadow. Where do we start? From the United States, for sure, there will be Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Special Representative for the Middle East Steve Witkoff, and Trump's Special Representative for Ukraine, General Keith Kellogg. Let's start with Keith Kellogg because he named 3 main tracks that will be discussed in Istanbul on May 15th. They somewhat echo what Witkoff said, but there is a difference in the last point. Let's talk about all of this. U.S. President Donald Trump's special envoy for Ukraine, General Keith Kellogg, said that negotiations between Ukraine and Russia will begin with the issue of territories. Kellogg said this in an interview on Fox Business. The 47th President's special envoy said that the United States is seeking a comprehensive ceasefire, quoting Kellogg. The first thing we want is a comprehensive ceasefire in the air, at sea, and on land. From there, we move on to the issue of territories. The 3 cases are the discussion of territories, the topic of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and the return of deported children to Ukraine. Regarding the territories, according to Kellogg, there are 5 main regions: They are actually called state, says Kellogg. Of course, we'll argue with the general. No one calls them states. The LPR and DPR declared themselves, Putin accepted them, but no one else recognizes them. As for the Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions, that is an incorrect designation. So what Kellogg says next, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, and Crimea. The discussion comes down to what it should look like, Kellogg says. We say, stay where you are. If you are on the land that you control now because you fought for it, then that is where we will start the negotiations. This will be important. This is where we can agree with Kellogg on such a formulation for an immediate and comprehensive ceasefire. And then we can talk, but for now, this is not an acceptable model for final or temporary peace agreements. Write your opinion in the comments. Kellogg also talked about the Zaporizhzhia NPP. According to the special representative, one of the key topics of the talks will be Zaporizhzhia NPP. We said we would help restore plant's operation. It will take time, but we will be able to launch it and provide energy to the entire region. The third and most important thing for us is the return of deported children to Ukraine. What does Kellogg say? We also talk about bringing children home. President Trump discussed with Zelenskyy the return of 20-30,000 missing children home. He says that not everyone will be returned, but he hopes for the best. The U.S. Special Envoy also spoke about Ukraine's role in NATO negotiations and Western peacekeepers. We also discussed NATO's involvement. What does the alliance look like? We say that in Ukraine, unfortunately, this may not happen in the near future. Maybe in the future, but not now, Kellogg said. Kellogg named the countries that can monitor the implementation of the ceasefire agreement in Ukraine. We are talking about the forces of resilience. Now there are 4 of them. The British, the French, the Germans, and now the Poles have forces to the west of the Dnipro, beyond the reach zone. In the east, peacekeeping forces with the participation of a third party. Summing up, Kellogg said he did not expect perfect negotiations and was confident that the parties would have to compromise. The negotiations are not going to be perfect. It never happens, but there will be compromises. It is important to stop the killings, and this is Trump's goal. Let's talk a little bit here and put some emphasis. First of all, 4 countries. Kellogg made a wishful statement as if it were fact, because the Poles have already said that they will not be sending any peacekeepers to Ukraine. The French and the British, yes, the Germans, questionable. This is the latest agreement. They do have a military deficit. Britain has very few soldiers. They cannot recruit a normal number of people for the Navy. So this question remains open. In general, Kellogg is saying what Trump probably wants to hear in the White House, because it has happened more than once that what Keith Kellogg says doesn't align with the facts. By the way, Volodymyr Zelenskyy even denied that we were ever offered a 15-kilometer demarcation line. Kellogg said there is an option, 15 kilometers of withdrawal of the UAF, 15 kilometers of withdrawal of Putin's terrorists. Zelenskyy said, no one has sent us anything like this. Again, you have to listen, but know your stuff. In general, I would like to tell you that these theses of Kellogg, how do they resonate with the theses of Witkoff? Witkoff said the same the day before, but the third issue was not about children because Witkoff was never interested in that. He has no empathy, like Trump, for deaths, for children, for the outrages committed by Russia. He is only interested in money, money, money. So Witkoff's second point, i.e., discussing the territory of the ZNPP, coincides with what Kellogg said, but the third point is access to the ocean along the Dnipro. And what I told you, Volodymyr Zelenskyy held a briefing with journalists. By the way, it is already a tradition for our president to meet with the media before important meetings and answer their questions. This is how the theses that are heard all over the world, and which are heard primarily in the U.S., are being made. It was like that before London, you remember. There was a briefing, and this time there are meetings with the media before Istanbul. So the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, commented on the statement by U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff that 3 issues should be considered in the negotiations between Ukraine and Russia: Ukrainian territories, the Zaporizhzhia NPP, and access to the Dnipro River and the ocean. This is the third point that Kellogg and Witkoff differ on. During the briefing, the head of our state said that he looked at Witkoff's statement not through the prism of what is happening now, but through the prism of what happened before. Certain signals from U.S. representatives had been heard before. As for the points you mentioned, we have seen them. What I told you was the appropriate signals from the United States of America when we had meetings, Volodymyr Zelenskyy said. Either in London on April 23rd or in France on April 17th, the United States gave such signals. I understand them. These signals came from both intelligence and various participants in the negotiation process. It seems, says Zelenskyy, that these are primarily Russia's signals. In my opinion, ideologically, this is very similar to their stance on the Zaporizhzhia plant, access to water, etc. So, to make some compromise, but not to make any compromise. Why? Because, as I have already emphasized, Zaporizhzhia plant today is a very complex facility. We emphasize that only the Ukrainian side will be able to work with it, the president said. He added that it is impossible to restore the Zaporizhzhia NPP's operation overnight, and it could take at least 2 to 2.5 years. It is not yet known how much money needs to be invested to launch the plant. The president noted that Ukraine wants to return the plant to its control. It will not work for anyone without us, the head of state emphasized. At the same time, Zelenskyy noted that Ukraine is ready to agree to attract investment if the United States is interested in it. I think such proposals, to give us the plant. I asked, what's next? What about access to water? And the city of Enerhodar, where will these workers live? Without water, there will be no safety at the plant. And the issue of the dam was raised there. So far, it looks like there have been such proposals. It is too early to talk about it. First, we need a ceasefire, and then we will talk about the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the president added. We see the following case. Volodymyr Zelenskyy commented on the ZNPP and made it clear. In fact, only Ukraine can cool reactors from the Dnipro. That's it. There is nothing more Russia can do there, let alone the United States. What should we conclude? We see that the first thing we need is a ceasefire, and then we can talk about something else. I will summarize the issues raised by Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the briefing. He said, Putin is afraid of direct talks with me. I have also repeatedly emphasized this to President Trump, Volodymyr Zelenskyy says. I believe that Putin does not want to end the war, does not want a ceasefire and negotiations. An unconditional ceasefire cannot be ensured by any person from Russia except Putin. This is how Zelenskyy explains why he wants to meet only with Putin. He stated he was going to come to Istanbul from Ankara. If I know that Putin is there, I will fly to talk to him. Otherwise, no. Volodymyr Zelenskyy goes on to say that we have received a signal from China that they support a 30-day ceasefire. Our guarantor also says that China asked Ukraine to ensure security in Moscow on May 8 to 10. There were no attacks on the parade, and it is very important that we have contact with China. They said, we know that you want to demolish Red Square and to smash this dwarf, but our Xi will be there. Please don't strike. Ukraine responded, all right, we won't. Nothing flew towards the Kremlin. Although on the 6th and 7th of May, 524 drones, according to the Russian Ministry of Defense, were shot down. That is, we understand that up to 1,000 of our various good, nice, beautiful drones covered this swampy country. It is also important to note that China supports 30 days ceasefire. Moreover, what was it like? China always says the following, that they are for de-escalation, for ending the war, these general phrases. And then they asked a representative of the Chinese Foreign Ministry, and he said, "We support what Ukraine is saying." So they supported our position. They did not just say that they were for peace, but supported it. This is unprecedented. This is going back to the fact that the world is really putting pressure on this idiot in the Kremlin. Also, what Zelensky said at the briefing, we invited Trump to join the Istanbul talks. I will meet with Erdogan in Ankara on Thursday, says Zelensky, and will fly to Istanbul if Putin appears there. Only I have the right to talk to Putin, and Volodymyr Zelensky commented on the 2022 NSDC decree banning negotiations with Putin. As Zelensky explained, the NSDC decree of that time simply forbade others, but did not forbid himself to negotiate. Volodymyr Zelensky explained this as follows. Pro-Russian forces such as Medvedchuk were actively trying to negotiate. Volodymyr Zelensky says that this is exactly the direction in which the bans on negotiations were aimed. And finally, Volodymyr Zelensky said, I am ready to do anything to make the meeting with Putin happen. We see a great case in the tactics chosen by Ukraine because we talked about this. There is no good option for Putin to do. Because to come to a NATO country and meet with Zelensky means to go along with our president. We understand that Putin considers himself the greatest, that our government is illegitimate and there is no one to talk to. That's his view. And if he doesn't come, we understand that this primarily means disagreeing with Trump, who said that attending the meeting is a must. And of course, what's important is that Erdogan and Xi are saying indirectly, come on, you've already bored everyone on this earth. Meet, agree on something, because there is no movement. It will be harder for Putin because it will be very unpleasant to refuse China. In general, there is some understanding of who should be present at this meeting from Russia. Russia's representatives will be waiting for Ukraine and Turkey on May 15, 2025, to hold talks. This statement was made by Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov in a commentary to Russia Samarti. First channel. Our delegation will be there and will wait for the Ukrainian side, Peskov said. At the same time, he did not confirm whether the dictator of the Russian Federation himself would decide to make the trip. The composition of the Russian delegation has not yet been disclosed. What did Putin's spokesman say? When the president gives the order, we will do it all. At the same time, a senior former Kremlin official who spoke to the Washington Post on condition of anonymity said that Russia will be represented at the talks in Istanbul by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Putin's foreign policy aide Yuri Ushakov. Both were at talks in Saudi Arabia with the United States. Ukrainian President Zelensky emphasized that he would be waiting for Putin in Istanbul. And we see that his mouth, Peskov, is afraid to announce the delegation. Listen, you are so strong. Is it difficult for you to say who will represent your great country, as you call it? You always shout that you are the greatest. It's hard to say. Everyone already knows who is coming there, and you are silent. Why does Putin not want these talks? It is obvious. Because he does not want any peace, he does not want any ceasefire. If Putin really wanted to stop killing, especially Ukrainians, he would have said, let's not kill, stop right now and we'll talk later. But no, he knows that he will not fly anywhere, he will not agree with anyone on anything, so he continues. And why stop the killings if he does not intend to change anything?